Check, 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 check. Mic coming in clear. Yeah. Green readings on the audio. Yeah. I like that. Okay. Let me sharpen up and then we're going to get straight into it. No time to waste, baby. Hello and welcome back to Silicon Made Simple, a beginner friendly tech YouTube channel where we discuss all things PC, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, all the cool stuff that's going on in the world of tech. You name it, we're going to talk about it. Whatever you guys think, leave it in the comments, right? So I'm trying to build a community where we can all grow together and learn together. Hello, how are you? So if you guys don't know the layout, let me go ahead and go straight over that. We're a 2 times a week show. We do Tuesdays and Thursdays. Now, Tuesdays, we go over a bunch of PC components, hardware stuff. It's really about physical technology, like stuff you can get your hands on, modding stuff we're going to get into, all these really cool things that are related to computer hardware and so forth, right? Thursdays are more related to cybersecurity specifically. So we do all kinds of like labs where we actually practiced Linux last week. We've been learning about that. So Thursdays is a lot of hands-on stuff, and Tuesdays is a lot of like lessons and stuff that I find really interesting and just stuff that you guys need to know about PC components or PC hardware for the system to make sense. So if you guys don't know about PC systems, I would recommend you go back and watch some of the earlier streams. You might be a little bit lost, but if you go ahead and leave your stuff in the chat, I'll see it and I'll try to answer the questions. And comments, of course, will always be answered in a timely manner. So go ahead and if you guys are lost or want to correct or add anything, feel free to drop it in the comments below. Constructive criticism is always welcomed, and questions that I can answer, I will answer, right? So without further ado, we've basically been checking off PC components kind of like one by one by one by one at this point. And with that being said, the last really like component that I need to get across is going to be the cooling systems. We've pretty much talked about everything else. We've talked about CPUs, GPUs, RAM, storage. We're going to talk about cases today too with cooling because those kind of go hand in hand with like radiator sizes and things like that. And what else did we talk about? We went over motherboards, form factors. Yeah, so we've really covered a lot. And if you guys would like to get caught up, like I said, those resources are going to be on the channel for you, and I recommend you watch them. But let's go ahead and get right into it. So, I have these videos that I love to share with you guys. So let me go ahead and share my screen and my system audio. We're going to go to YouTube, and then I had this saved for us. Boom. All right.
Air cooling.
So I always like to give a little bit of a disclaimer. These videos do start very abrupt. So context, what are we talking about? We're talking about every PC cooling system explained. So a cooling system is a term for basically the method of cooling, in other words. So there's different ways that you can cool your computer, and different hardware components are going to require different cooling techniques. Things that have a lot of power draw and a lot of heat radiation are going to change how you cool it and how you lay out your cases, your case fans, excuse me, and how you lay out your radiator, what size radiator you get, if you're even going AIO, whether or not you can cool with air. So there's a lot of things that come down to it, and understanding the actual needs of the cooling that's going to keep your system running optimal. It's not only going to save you money, but it's definitely going to help increase the longevity of your system, because you're not going to be running things that are more powerful than necessary, right? So we'll start with air cooling. You might even notice when we go on like PC parts pickers, some of the components might come with a manufacturer's air cooler. And those are a lot of the times okay to use. I wouldn't recommend relying on them if you are a creator or you game under intense loads. But there is a lot of really good air coolers that are third party slash manufactured by other companies, and those tend to be really good. I've heard some great things about Noctua. I've heard some great things about the Be Quiet. There's another one called Arctic. So there's a lot of different air cooler options. But how does an air cooler work and what is it? It's kind of like the first cooling thing we're going to get into. So that's where we're starting.
Air cooling is the simplest and most common way to keep your computer from turning into a hot potato. It uses metal and fans. That's it. A chunk of metal called a heatsink
Very
sits
simple.
on top of your CPU, and when it gets hot, the metal soaks up the heat like a sponge. Then the fan blows that heat away into the air inside your case, and other fans push it out. Imagine your CPU is sweating, and the heatsink is the towel. Cheap, easy, and reliable. That's air cooling. The only real downside? It's not the quietest. When your computer's under load, those fans sound like tiny jet engines. But hey, it works. No fancy liquids, no risky plumbing, just good old wind power.
So that's kind of what you're used to with like I don't know if you guys remember how loud the PlayStation 4s could get, but those had some pretty gnarly air coolers in them. I fixed a couple of them back in the days, and a lot of the times that air cooler would get clogged with dirt and dust, and then it would just become so overworked because of how much, or should I say, the lack of air that it's receiving. So then it just becomes so much louder. It's important to keep your air coolers clean, the fans that are attached to the cooler, I should say. I'll explain a little bit more about that too.
It's the reason budget PCs and gaming rigs everywhere stay cool enough to survive long nights of Minecraft marathons. AIO liquid cooling. AIO, or all-in-one liquid cooling, is what happens when your CPU gets treated like it's in a sci-fi spa. Inside that sleek-looking unit are tiny tubes filled with coolant, yes, literal liquid, that move heat away from the CPU and send it to a radiator. The radiator has fans that blow the hot air out.
Okay, so I'm sorry to go back, but I was thinking about something with the air cooling. He didn't really explain how it works, did he? Well, no, he did. So there's a fan on top of the metal, and the metal acts as a heat shrink. So the metal is going to basically absorb it, and the fan is going to move the heat through slash away from that part. So that's basically how an air cooler runs. It's a giant heat shrink, and then a fan attached to it to move the air away from it slash through it. Air AIO liquid cooling is different in the sense that you have a pump, you have coolant that actually runs through the system, through the tubes, and then exhausts the hot air through the radiator at the top. I definitely taught you guys about that when we went over my PC build, but right behind me, you can even see that there's a flashing box on top of like the middle of my motherboard. That's actually my AIO pump, and that's a head, and it's circulating air and water to go through there and move around and keep the CPU cool. And there's actually a metal plate under that that's kind of like a heat shrink too. So the way that works is it's going to absorb the heat and then immediately cool it and exhaust it out through the top of my system. So it's really efficient at cooling, and you can ramp it up, you can slow it down. You have a lot of control with your AIO or your or even your excuse me, even your air cooler through your motherboard software, or there's even third-party softwares you can get to control that too. So definitely look into your options that you have when it comes down to creating your custom ramps so that your fans can speed up when you play games and slow down when you're not playing games, and vice versa. Just kind of helps your system run optimally, right?
Kind of like a car's cooling system, but shrunken down. The best part? It looks awesome. RGB lights, glowing tubes, all that futuristic flair. But it's not just for show. AIO coolers can handle way more heat than most air coolers, making them perfect for powerful CPUs or overclocking. The trade-off? More parts, more chances for something to go wrong. If an air cooler fails, you lose performance. If an AIO leaks, well, you might lose a motherboard. Still, for most PC gamers, it's the perfect balance between power, looks, and not needing a wrench to install. Custom water loop.
Look, so don't be scared. These AIO coolers have quality control checks from these manufacturers that most of the time you don't have anything to worry about if you install it correctly. The water that's actually inside these blocks is not something that you have to fill up yourself. And so that's extremely convenient and it makes it much easier because it just comes already installed and all you do is mount it with your respective bracket onto your motherboard. And then once it's all tight on there, you mount the fans onto the radiator, tighten the radiator from the top. And it's really nothing much but a couple of screws when it comes to actually installing one. You just got to make sure everything's tight and make sure that your fans aren't oriented in a silly way, and you're really good to go. Again, you're not filling up these AIOs by yourself. They come with water in them already, and they're most of the time, I would say more than 90% of the time, checked for the exact thing of the mitigation of leaks. For example, I have the Corsair one and I've been running it for a couple years on a daily basis, mind you, for multiple hours a day, under different workloads and under different types of stress loads. And I've never had any type of even a drip go onto my GPU, which is right below it based on how my motherboard is. So no concerns there. These custom loops, however, that we're about to get into, you're filling that water up yourself, and there's different solutions and different fluids that goes into it. So this is where things can get messy. Like that visual he showed you of it leaking onto the motherboard was from a custom loop, not an AIO. Let's get into it.
Custom water loops are for the kind of PC builders who look at an AIO cooler and say, cute, but I want danger. These setups are fully custom built. Tubes, fittings, pumps, reservoirs, all carefully pieced together like a mini science lab inside your case.
You can get some really nice
Instead of one
aesthetics
sealed
with it,
system,
because
you build
can
the
get
whole
these,
route
like,
yourself.
pipe fittings
Water
and make
flows
it
from a
look like-
tank, through the CPU block, maybe the GPU too,
it looks
and
really
back
cool.
to the radiator. It's gorgeous, clear tubing, colorful coolant, and if you add RGB lighting, your PC basically becomes a nightclub for electrons. But it's not just about looks. Custom loops can handle monster levels of heat and keep your PC whisper quiet. The downside, you need patience, tools, and nerves of steel. One wrong fitting, and you might create a very expensive water feature. It's not for beginners, it's for enthusiasts who enjoy risk and beauty in equal measure.
So Linus has some really cool custom loops on his channel. I recommend going there and checking out the builds that he's done and collabed with other YouTubers, because the loops that they make are incredible. I myself have not done a custom loop yet. Nobody's asked me to do that or repair one. So with that being said, my experience is kind of limited when it comes to custom loops hands on. I know a lot about them because I'm a nerd and I study them, but never got to play with one. So if you guys want me to try to fix your custom loop, hit me. I would love to give it a shot.
Passive cooling. Passive cooling is the chill monk of the PC world. Calm, silent, and doesn't need to move a muscle. No fans, no pumps. Just pure silent heat dissipation through massive chunks of metal, fins, and clever design. The idea is simple. Heat naturally rises and spreads, so the components slowly release warmth into the air. It's perfect for low-power builds. Think home servers, mini PCs, or systems you want running 24/7 without making a sound. The big perk, zero moving parts. That means nothing can break or make noise. The downside, it's not powerful enough for high-end CPUs or gaming beasts. If you tried to cool a gaming rig passively, you'd probably end up with molten RAM. But for quiet, low-heat machines, it's pure serenity, like a computer meditating while doing your taxes. Immersion cooling.
Makes sense?
Immersion cooling.
Not much to go over there, honestly. I mean, it's
Home servers, mini PCs, or systems you want running 24/7 without making a sound. The big perk, zero moving parts. That means nothing can break or make noise. The downside, it's not powerful enough for high-end CPUs or gaming beasts. If you tried to cool a gaming rig passively, you'd probably end up with molten RAM. But for quiet, low-heat machines, it's pure serenity, like a computer meditating while doing your taxes.
So passive cooling is going to be implemented in a lot of like IoT devices. A lot of phones have passive cooling, things like that. They're almost 100% fail safe, I want to say. And because of how they're engineered, they almost They almost never like have anything go wrong with them. They're extremely reliable and pretty cheap for that matter. But it's not that they're like, a bad cooling option, like he said. It's just that they're not powerful enough to run a computer or anything that actually will increase to, temperatures in the triple digits. So be mindful of that. Don't get a passive cooling device for your new PC build trying to save money, because you're just going to melt your stuff and be sad.
Immersion cooling. Immersion cooling is
I think I mentioned immersion cooling slightly before, like how Microsoft, I think, was like immersion cooling an entire server. So the scale of immersion cooling gets pretty massive, at least from what we've come to know. Check that out. But otherwise, immersion cooling is something that is very prevalent in data centers too. Something I'm really interested in. So let's learn a little bit more about immersion cooling.
when your computer takes a literal bath and survives. The entire motherboard and components are dunked into a special clear liquid that doesn't conduct electricity. This liquid absorbs heat way better than air, so it keeps every part cool and calm, even under insane workloads. It's like your PC living inside a fish tank, minus the fish. And yes, it looks as weird as it sounds. Companies use it for servers or crypto mining rigs that run non-stop because it's super efficient and quiet. But it's not something you do at home unless you enjoy risk and cleanup. Spill it once, and your workspace smells like a chemistry lab. Still, it's one of the coolest and most futuristic methods out there. A PC taking a spa day in liquid armor.
So yeah, that's not water, right? Let's give it a quick search. Immersion cooling fluids. I mean, we did talk about doing smart research, right? So I do have, yeah, we can. Nope, this is a blog. We don't want blogs. Varotech International. SpiceX Media, the ScienceDirect.com. What is this? By C Zhang. I'm not a robot. Sure. Yeah, okay. So I'm just making sure enough of these articles kind of match up so that we know whether or not we can trust this. But immersion cooling uses dielectric fluids. So these are like synthetic hydrocarbons. It's clear, odorless, engineered oils, um, mineral oils, and things like that. So it's like a chemical oil mixture, and it's not actually water. It just looks like water because, well, it's a clear and it's fluid. So a lot of people will think that you're putting a PC in literal water, but it's actually a scientific blend of oils that are designed to be kind of like a thermal sponge, if you will.
Thermoelectric cooling. Thermoelectric cooling is where science decides to flex a little. It uses something called a Peltier module, a tiny plate that gets cold on one side and hot on the other when electricity passes through it. It's like magic, but real. The cold side touches your CPU, soaking up heat, while the hot side dumps it somewhere else, usually with the help of a heatsink or a water loop. Sounds amazing, right? It is, until you realize how much power it eats and how tricky it is to balance. If you don't manage that heat properly, it's like trying to cool your drink by setting your house on fire. Still, it's fascinating tech, the same stuff used in mini fridges or spacecraft. For most PC users, it's overkill, but for experimenters and hardware nerds, it's a fun way to turn science class into a cooling system.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform.
Most people who want to break into
So that was it, right? Pretty simple. That was really like the best way that I could have explained cooling. Now, let me show you guys a couple things before we call it a day. This one is going to be a little bit short. Cooling is something that you can kind of just shop around with and learn a lot about. So of course, PC Part Picker, our trusted friend. Go to products, go to CPU coolers. Now you kind of need, I'm going to teach you guys how to shop for them, right? Because this wouldn't be Silicon Made Simple if I left you guys with some big questions. Um, when you're shopping for these CPU coolers, understand your thermal needs. Understand how hot your product is going to get. Make sure you do the research on the CPU that you're buying so that you know how much cooling power you need. A lot of the times, right, the cooling power that you need is going to be directly related to the cores and threads that your CPU utilizes. So if you're running something like when we talked about a Threadripper, yeah, dog, you're going to need something more than an air cooler. Probably safe to say you're going to need a big radiator to cool that. But if you're running a basic gaming CPU, you're probably fine with an up-to-date air cooler. A lot of these have great reviews. Like you could run something like the Noctua NHD15. You know, it's got large fans on it. They run 1500 revs per minute, which is fast for a fan. And then again, that's 300 to 1500. So I told you guys a little bit about fan speeds and how you can go into your motherboard software or into any other like third-party proprietary software and actually edit those fan curves so that your fans speed up when you perform certain actions on your system. That is something that you want to pay attention to because this is kind of like your threshold for what you can do with that. Noise level is always measured in decibels. Again, fans like this and air coolers like this are going to get a little bit louder than anything else. So pay attention to that. If that's something that you really care about and you want a quiet system, it's really helpful here that under the specs, it actually tells you the decibel noise level. 19 to 25 is not very loud, but then again, I work in a jewelry shop, so you know the steamers are I hear them in my sleep. I'm partially deaf. With that being said, there's air coolers. You know, you can make sure you read the reviews on them. You got the Arctic Freezer 36. Really, the only difference between these air coolers is going to be the fan capabilities. So this fan range is a little bit more broad than the Noctua. It goes slower and about 300 revs per minute faster. Not enough, not fast enough to make it like a purchasing decision, but notable for sure. A lot of these reviews are going to be helpful too because they come from a lot of different places. So yeah, you can kind of see what cooler is good for what CPU if you just do a little bit of homework. But now, if you know for sure that, for example, my system is a hybrid system. What do I mean by hybrid system? It's like a workstation, it's a creating station, and it's a gaming. You can game on it. So I have a very versatile CPU that is capable of handling high heat situations with the right cooling. That's why I have an all-in-one liquid cooler with the radiator that I told you guys about. So when it comes down to these AIO systems, right? CPU coolers again, head over to here and hit water cooled. Yes. Now you're going to notice you have different sizes. These are the sizes of the radiator on the top. So that's directly going to correlate to what case you can get. Because if you have a small case and you're doing like a mini ITX build to keep it compact on your desk, you do not want to buy this 360 millimeter radiator. I have a 280 millimeter radiator, so that's two fans, and it's pretty big. Let me see if I can actually show you guys kind of what it looks like. So what you're looking at right here is the radiator, and that is the fans, right? So the fans are actually pulling the air through and exhausting it up and out. And then this is the block right there. Okay. So that's my AIO system. I have a 280 millimeter radiator, which is the size of this thing up here, which is where all the hot air is coming out of. Okay. Got a little dust in it. I just knocked my adapter over. No biggie. I'll pick it up later. Right. So that's what a 280 millimeter radiator looks like inside a full form factor case. I have a full form factor case, full size motherboard, right? So that should just kind of show you guys a little bit of a reference point to how big these radiators can actually get. Now, think about what a 360 millimeter radiator would look like. And most of the time, those have 3 fans and they look kind of closer to this. So notice how it's Corsair, IQ Link, Titan, 360, RX, RGB. They need to simplify these product names. What the actual is going on, bro? Let's break it down, though. Let's make it simple, right? That's why we're here. IQ Link Titan. The Corsair is the company name. The IQ Link is the product name, right? This is the Titan is like the extended product name. So like this is like the collection name, the IQ Link, right? The Titan is the product name. 360 is the size of it. RX RGB. I don't know what RX is. I'm not gonna flex. I don't know what RX. 73.5 CPM liquid CPU cooler. Long name, very, very excessively long name. But what you need to extract from this is the fact that it is a 360 millimeter cooler. What does that look like, Ty? Looks like this. So you'll notice mine had 2 fans. This one has 3. It's a longer radiator, beefier, chunkier, heavier, bigger in all aspects. Whatever word you want to use to describe a large size for something, that's what it is. These radiators are big. So you do need a full size case. That's what I mean. Make sure that you're actually checking what size radiator you need for your CPU. And then after that, go ahead and give it a quick Google search with whatever case you want to get and type in clearance, radiator clearance, cooling clearance, something like that. And it should be able to tell you whether or not that's going to fit. You can also use ChatGPT for things like this. AI is very more than capable of giving you these comparisons if you just give it a slight prompt. Just say, hey, I'm going to give you 2 products and I need you to check and make sure that they will physically be compatible with one another. You say something like that, it'll check the dimensions of both products from wherever site you're looking at it, and then it'll give you a yes or no and a little bit of a heads up if it's something that you want to check. Right. So that is how you know about the sizes of your water cooling. 420 millimeters is even larger than 360. I've never installed a 420 millimeter radiator on a system. Most people that are going to be avid gamers or they're going to have like a productivity or a workstation, they're going to use anything from an air cooler to a 280, 240, sometimes 360. But I would say the most popular in my PC assembling and repair career so far has been the 280 millimeter radiators. They work just fine. They're a good moderate price range, and you really don't need much more than that when it comes down to it, because like I said, I've had mine for years and it keeps my cores running optimal. Again, I did have my custom fan curves set up and all that. I think there's not much else to go on when it comes to the AIO systems, right? We went into socket form factor, so make sure that you're getting the right form factor, because that's gonna determine the type of bracket that you get, because you have to install it from the back of the motherboard and then pull it in and then fasten it from both sides. So I know that was like a horrible hand model. I didn't show you guys anything right there. But yeah, this is basically the last PC component lesson that I need to give, because now we can start getting hands-on. I'm looking for like an old PC that I can get my hands on so we can actually just open stuff and I can start getting more physical with you guys when it comes to the hardware and actually showing you guys how to install things and how to take things out. Bear with me. I'm looking for donation systems, man. I gotta ask my work. I think they're giving away some stuff. But yeah, again, your manufacturers are over here. Just do your homework. A lot of these guys are owned by bigger tech companies. So a couple of reputable ones, Lee and Lee, Deepcool, Corsair, Thermalright, NZXT, Cooler Master, Arctic. Man, there's so many options, and cosmetically it's really just going to come down to color, so make sure that it has a cool aesthetic that you like. Oh, one more really cool thing that I'm going to teach you guys. There are some of these coolers that are going to come with screens. So like the Ryujin 2, I think that comes with a screen where you can actually like, yeah, so you have a 3.5-inch LCD screen on the top, and you can use the software and actually play like video loops or like graphics that you made or whatever like that. So that's a really cool way to customize your system. It might ramp up the price a little bit, but another cool thing that you can do is actually display your system thermals on there. So that's something that I want to upgrade in my system, is to get a pump head that has an LCD screen so that I can display my system thermals, because I think that would be really helpful. There's some times where it's running a little hot and the fans start ramping up, and I might gotta stop my game and check core temp real quick just to make sure everything's good. But I know some systems that I've installed, like one from my brother and another one that I worked on, they have the LCD screens actually inside their pump head. So we just kind of programmed it to have like a video playing, or like I said, the thermals showing on one of them, and that was a really cool, kind of useful upgrade to the system. So yeah, the Kraken Plus I think has a screen. Yeah, see, so like that's what it would look like. It would tell you the temperature of your cooling system. And again, a lot of these are going to be modeled the same way, like brand name, product name, size, whether or not it's RGB capable, and then that's really what you're paying attention to. Like, see, Gigabyte Aorus Water Force, blah blah blah, boo 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 boo, 360 millimeters. That's all you need to know. And then you can see, okay, it's got a little screen, cool. It's got RGB capabilities, sick. How much is it? In my budget? Not in my budget. I'm gonna buy it. I'm not gonna buy it. Again, you've got your budget thing over here too. So PC part picker, you can't go wrong with using that to find these coolers. Again, because when you click on one, they're going to show you prices from across multiple sellers. That's Amazon, B&H, Photo Video, Best Buy, Corsair, Newegg. So along these top 5, you'll see right now the price is the same. So at that point, I would say go with whichever shipping logistics give you the least headache and pull the trigger there. But a lot of the times sometimes you might find some are a couple of dollars off, maybe $10 to $15 off, $5 off. So click this, look at the prices, and pull the trigger. Yeah, like on this one, for example, for the Rogue Ryujin 3 ARGB Extreme, this one is $415 at Amazon. So Newegg is not in stock, but it's also in stock on the Asus site for $460. So it's cheaper on Amazon than it is on Asus, which is kind of wild. B&H has it for $460, and then MemoryC.com has it for $478. So there's multiple places you can get it in stock, and it looks like Amazon is the cheapest. And then, like I said, I showed you guys how to look at the price. There's a price graph here to know if you're buying it at a low price or if it's higher in its MSRP lifespan, essentially. So right now it looks like it's at a pretty good price for a good cooler. So we might have just found you guys a deal live. Check out the Asus Rogue Ryujin 3 ARGB Extreme if you need a 360 millimeter cooler with a really awesome screen, excuse me. And yeah. What else, man? I really think that is kind of it. Cooling your system properly is extremely important to make sure that everything runs optimally and to make sure that you don't damage your components, because all the while these parts are meant for a heat threshold, should we say. If you do not manage the heat, you will end up, kind of cooking them, quite literally. So, and that goes to say also not just for PCs, but like for your game consoles, you want to make sure that you're keeping them up on a ventilated area. Don't lay them down on the carpet. All of these things actually do matter because you will be clogging up the physical components, and then over time, the the actual operation of them is going to dwindle, and then we now know because of watching this channel how everything works together and needs one another to function. So if you're kind of clipping a link, then the whole chain is going to snap, right? You got to think of it like that. Cooling is very, very important. Yeah, the last thing that I want to talk about is cooling on power supplies. You'll notice if we go to power supplies, a lot of these have built-in coolers. I've really never had an instance where a power supply cooler fails. That's pretty rare. If you guys have had any troubles with that, please leave it in the comments or send me a message anywhere on any of the socials or anything. Because it seems to me that these fans that work inside the power supply unit are pretty redundant. They kind of just have their own little lifespan, and you don't need to like plug an extra fan cord into your motherboard for them to function. It kind of functions with the PSU if you have a modern one, especially these modular ones that came out in the last couple of years. So um, you don't need to think about cooling your power supply unit is what I was going to say, because you'll look at these and you'll notice that they kind of take care of that in the design. They'll have proprietary cooling systems and they'll incorporate it into the design. Like mine has it's got a big fan and it's got RGB kind of flashing in the exact same light pattern that the rest of my cords and my CPU block and stuff like that is flashing in. So it's pretty cool. Some of them are going to have RGB, some of them are going to have like a really cool design on it. But again, you don't need to worry for the most part, right? You don't need to worry or be concerned with cooling your power supply because they come with the manufacturer's cooling, and all the time I would say these are up to par. Like I've never had to modify a power supply because it's getting too hot, in which case we would have to open it up and then install a fan that has a higher RPM rate or something to keep it cool. That's like a very rare repair, and I haven't heard even much about it in like the group chats and stuff that I'm in with other PC technicians. Don't really talk about things like that. um so yeah, man, that's kind of cooling in a nutshell. When we talk a little bit more about data centers, which is gonna we're gonna start getting into internet next week. This Thursday we're gonna be back with the the live labs, and then Tuesday we're gonna move on to internet because that's kind of hardware, and then I want to talk to you guys about the basics of internet, 802.11, different ports and protocols and things like that. And so once we understand how the internet connects these devices, then we're going to go into something that I think is really, really awesome. And that's the Internet of Things, because that's basically anything that connects to the internet and is basically the backbone of the mobile infrastructure that we use today. So I'm really excited to start advancing the series a little bit more. This is really the last PC hardware component episode that we're going to do. Again, there will be future episodes considering or focused on PC hardware, but I want to start taking things apart and I want to start, going into it with a little bit more depth. So with that being said, yeah, man, make sure you watch this over again. If anything was confusing, leave it in the comments. I'll be monitoring and making sure that you guys understand and that we all feel up to speed. If there's anything you would like to correct me on, or there's anything you'd like to add to this lesson/lecture, go ahead and leave those too. I'm all game. Again, the resources are pcpartpicker.com, and that's kind of where I do all my shopping because of how it works. So Yeah. The reason I left out GPU cooling was because it kind of okay, I keep getting ahead of myself. There is one more thing. Do you guys remember when we talked about the overclocking versions of GPUs and why I suggested you get those because they have better cooling capabilities? That's what I meant. So in the same way that these PSUs have integrated cooling and the manufacturer designs them as part of the component itself, GPUs work the same way. But these WindForce overclocking models, they're expecting that you're going to be ramping up the capabilities and the performance of your GPU, thus generating more heat. With that being said, you might need a little bit more beefier of a cooling system. So that's what it means when you see these WindForce OC overclock is the fans might be a little bit faster. They might be stress tested a little more, things like that. So these overclocking GPU models are something that I always, always, always recommend, even if you're not overclocking. And I've said this on the channel before, because you're going to have better cooling capabilities, faster fans, maybe more fans, maybe a different fan design. They just put a little bit more focus into the cooling capabilities of the card when they're expecting it to be overclocked. So that's not to say that you can't buy any GPU that's not an OC version, but I would recommend spending a little bit extra, just a little bit extra, because you'll notice it's still in the same price range, give or take 20, maybe $40, but spend that little bit of extra money to have those overclock capable fans. That's exactly what I did. I have the Gigabyte 3070 and I got the Eagle overclock version because of that tip that a friend told me. So now I'm sharing that with you guys. When it comes down to GPUs, make sure you get the overclock version, and that's because those fans are a little bit better and they're going to keep your stuff running a little bit smoother. Now, that is really it. I've kind of covered everything when it comes to cooling, especially with each component. So you've got, your CPU coolers. That's the main thing we're talking about. You've got your video card coolers and your PSU coolers that are integrated. We went over, passive cooling, immersion cooling, AIOs, all these things, right? So try to remember some of this stuff and study up on it, because next week when we get into IoT, we're going to be talking about how these devices are cooled, how your phone is cooled. And I want to be able to just use these terms and not have to explain them over and over and over again. But I'm more than happy to. Again, I'm more than happy to keep everybody caught up to speed. It's just I want to start advancing the channel, and I want to do that in a way that is productive. So, with that being said, until I see you guys on Thursday for live labs, if you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments. You can hit me on any social channels. Yeah, we'll be back live on Thursday sometime between 7 and 8. I know it's a little bit inconsistent right now. I'm going to try to dial it in. Today we went live at 7:15, so not too bad. But it's going to be closer to 7. I'm going to try to get more on time for you guys. So yeah, until I talk to you then, have a safe and productive rest of your week. And yeah, Silicon made simple, baby. Peace.